All right, guys, welcome to chapter 11, lesson 1. That's pages 801 to 806. Make sure your name's on it and you have a staple up here at the top. So, today's lesson is going to be about hands on measuring with a ruler. All right, so it's important that we learn how to measure with a ruler for many, many reasons. In the near future, you'll probably have things that you'll have to measure either in your house or let's say you go into construction. All those things you're going to be measuring stuff with. And even if you sit there and think, well, I'm never going to use the ruler, I'm never going to have to measure things, well, you probably will. And one of these days it'll hit you, and then you'll be like, well, I don't know how to do this. So that's why we do this so that it's applicable later in life. So the essential question is, how can I use measurement conversions to solve real world problems? And that's the key thing, real world problems. Okay. That's why we do the math that we do, so we can learn about real world stuff. All right. So length is the measurement of distance between 2 points. And you can use a ruler to measure the length of objects to the nearest half inch. That's what we're going to do today, and the nearest quarter of an inch. So, looking at this ruler here that they have, and I want you guys to make some marks on your guys' page because I don't necessarily like how they have it divided up here. So I want you guys to make the marks on this little tiny ruler here, or you can even make it on this ruler down here that we're going to cut out here in a little bit. But you can just transfer that information over to that. So an inch is a unit of measurement of length. So you have an inch, which is from this 0 right here to this 1. That is 1 inch. Now, I like that right there. That is an inch. Now, the key thing that you're going to want to make sure that you do today when you're measuring things is you want to make sure you start on the 0. So go ahead and put an arrow right here and say start. Okay, we never measure here. We never measure starting out on the edge of the ruler. And whenever you look at a regular ruler like this one right here, you can see that there's an edge here of wood, and then you have this little black line right here. Well, that black line is where you're supposed to start. That's 0. So if we would have put a 0 on my ruler here, that's where that starts right there. So we would never start just on the edge here because, as you can see, that's going to be off by a 16th of an inch there. And if we were measuring something and we needed to have it very accurate, that's not going to be very good. So looking at this ruler up here, we're going to be measuring, as it said there, the nearest half inch and quarter inch. So what we've done on uh, in the English or the American system of measuring is we take this whole inch here and then we basically divide it by twos. We just keep dividing it by two, but divided by two, and we keep doing that. Um, so because that way we can get a very fine, like detailed, very accurate measurement. The smaller we keep going, okay, the smaller we keep going, the more accurate that we get. So we have this right here. We have 0 to 1. That's 1 whole inch right there. If we divide this in half, we get this mark right here. And that's exactly what it says, which is half. So put a half right there in your guys' thing, half. So that would be a half of an inch. Okay, so if you look right here, this would be a half or 1.5 because it's 1 whole inch and then you have a half of inch. So then if we divide this part right here in half, we're going to get this little mark right here. And if you guys would remember what we just did, where we took 1/2, you remember that one? And we divided it by 2. We divided it in half, right? We took a half and divided it by 2. Remember how we did that right there? And then we said, well, 1/2, the opposite of this is times. The opposite of 2/1 is 1/2, which gives us 1/4. Well, that's what this mark right here is 1/4. That's a quarter of an inch. This right here is a quarter of an inch. Half of an inch, this is a half right here. Okay. So when we're talking about quarters of inches, we're talking about that quarter right there. Now, here's the thing that you also have to pay close attention to is notice this 1/2 here. Well, if we talk about in quarters, right, we talk about there's 4 quarters in a dollar. Well, so you got a fourth right here, 1/4, and then you go to half. Well, really, you got to think about it. This half is really 2 quarters, right? It's 2 quarters, 2/4, which is we just simplified it. So you get 1/4, you get 2/4 or 1/2, and then this third quarter right here would be 3/4, right? And then you would get 4/4 or 1 right here. So make sure you have your guys' ruler divided like this right here. And again, we'll probably go down here and cut this one out and change that one as well. But you have a quarter of an inch, half inch, 3/4 of an inch, and you have an inch. And that's what we're going to be using today to measure these different things as we go along. We're going to be measuring it to the nearest half inch, the nearest quarter inch. Okay, if you measure an object to a smaller unit of measure, you get a more precise or accurate measure. So that's kind of what I said earlier. So let's measure it. The width of a button is the length of the widest part of the button. Find the width of the button to the nearest half inch and quarter inch. So there he gave us a ruler right here, right? And here's the 1 inch mark, right? So we would mark this right here as we look up there. Well, that's the first, the bigger mark is 1/4 of an inch. This is 1/2, 3/4. So it says place the ruler against one edge of the object, line up the zero. See how they got the zero right here, lined up right here, and then they've got this lined up right here. Okay, so that's where this line falls. How big it is right there. Find the half-inch mark that is closest to the other end. Okay, so the half-inch mark. So here's a half inch, right? This would be another half inch because this whole thing here is a half inch. So this mark is actually closest to that right there. So to the nearest half inch, the button is, so we have 1 inch because we got the whole one right here, right? And then it's closest to this 1/2 right here. So 1 1/2 inches. Now it says to the nearest quarter inch. So again, we have our 1 inch, which is right here, and it's not close to this 1/4, is it? And it's not close to this 1/2 or 2/4. It's pretty close to this 3/4. So we'd say 1 3/4 inches wide. So see, this one right here is going to be a more accurate measurement, mainly because it's a smaller, tinier unit than that. You have 1 1/2, which is right there. But then when you get to this, you get a lot smaller, a more accurate measurement. So go ahead and we're going to take our scissors and we're going to cut out this ruler here like so. Okay. And you guys need to cut it out as well. You can use a wooden ruler, but for now, I would appreciate and would prefer you to use this paper one here. And we're going to go ahead and mark out. This is a quarter, just like we had up here. Okay, this is going to be a half inch, and this is going to be 3/4 of an inch. And we're going to make this again a quarter of an inch, a half inch, 3/4 of an inch, and then we have 1/4, 1/2, 3/4. Now I did most of the work right there for you to help you out on that. The little marks here, those right there are just eighths, because if you divide 1/4 and 2, you're going to get 1/8. But we're not messing with that one right now, so don't worry too much about that. All right, so let's look on the back side here. Try it. Find the length of a paper clip to the nearest half inch and a quarter of an inch. So you obviously won't have a paper clip right there handy with you like I do. Well, actually, I don't either because I'm trying to find one here in my mess of stuff, and apparently I don't have even a paper clip. Here we go. All right, so paper clip. There we go. Paper clip. So this is a large paper clip. So we're going to place the ruler against one edge of the object. Okay, so where are we going to start at? Remember, we're going to start right here at the 0. Okay, so I want to put an X right here because I want to make sure that I don't use that section right there. And if you want to just snip that off, you can, but I'm not going to snip it off because it's just a good reminder that you have to do that. So place the ruler against one edge of the object. Line up the 0 on the ruler to the end of the object. So right there is a 0, right? I'm going to do it like this. Remember, I'm not doing it here. I'm doing it right here on the edge of the 0, right there. Okay, right about there. Sticking to my hands. All right, so we have lined it up right there. Now it says find the half inch mark that's closest to the other end and repeat it with a quarter. So it looks like, as you can see, we kind of go right here. It's not very close to this 1 1/2 here, is it? Because remember, we have 1 whole inch and then we have 1 1/2. It looks like it reaches almost past this 3/4 of an inch right there. So I'm going to go ahead and say that, oops, this is closer to the 2 inches mark. Because remember, this is a half, this is the other half right here. So it's actually closest to the 2 inches long. If we're doing it to the nearest quarter of an inch, well, again, we look at, well, here's a whole inch. So we're going to put 1 inches down. And then the quarter of an inch, well, it's not close to this one, is it? And then this one is a half, which is also Remember, 2/4. And then this one is pretty close to 3/4 right here. So I'm going to say 1 3/4 inches long. Okay. So you just have to look at your ruler here when you're doing that. Explain how you can tell the difference between the half inch and the quarter inch marks when measuring an object with a ruler. Well, if you look at this, the half inch, aren't the lines a little bit longer than the quarter? So I would say the lines are a tad bit longer for the half than the quarter. Okay, they're a tad bit longer. You can see, like right here, that's the quarter inch, and this is a little bit longer. So they do that because you see how the eighth, like this is 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4. Those are slightly smaller than that. That way you can see the difference between those. All right. Will you ever have the same answer when measuring to the nearest half inch and measuring to the nearest quarter of an inch? Explain your reasoning. Well, if we're measuring to, you could because remember I said that this 1/2 here is also 2/4. Remember, so if you have something that measures to like right here and right here, right, it'd be pretty close to one and this 2/4 right here. So I'd say yes because 1/2 is also 2/4, right? So you can actually get to the nearest quarter on that one also. So circle the more precise measurement of the button in the first activity. So is it 1.5? Then they put 1.5, but again, all these are different sizes that you have, of course. But which one is the more precise? Well, like we said, the quarter of an inch ones are going to be a lot more precise because they're, we again, I look at it as saying, well, an inch, that's long, but that's a bigger wide range. Half inch gets a little bit more narrow. 3/4 gets a little bit more accurate, and then the 1/8 gets more accurate. And then you even get the ones that go down even down here into the 16th, which gets really, really accurate. All right, so let's do the assignment, the practice here, or practice it. Measure the length of each to the nearest half inch and the nearest quarter inch right here. So, okay, so we're going to line this up on the 0. See, I got it on the 0 right here. Okay. And I'm going to stick it right there. So I have at least an inch, right? I have at least an inch, and this is pretty close to, looks like the half inch, right? Because it says the nearest half inch. So you either have here, or you have here, and this is pretty close to the half. So we're going to say 1 1/2. The nearest quarter of an inch. Oh, it's right on the dot. So we're going to move up to the 3/4, I believe, because I mean it's right there. I would have to say that's probably 1 3/4 if we look at it. It's pretty close to that quarter of an inch right there. Okay. All right, goldfish. Everyone loves goldfishes because they're so delicious, right? All right, so we have lined it up on the 0 there, line it up on the other mark there. So it looks like the nearest half inch was exactly, isn't it? We have 2, which is there's a whole number 2, and looks like we have a half, so 2.5. And then to the nearest quarter of an inch, well, like we said earlier, you can have, because remember this is actually 2 1/4, right? So we can actually say that this is also 2.5 because that is a quarter of an inch. All right, so now we need to find the length of each object to the nearest half inch and the quarter inch also. So what you're going to do is you're going to take and you're going to find a book. And I'm going to use, let's see, I didn't prepare very well for this, did I? I'm going to use this Harry Potter book right here, okay? And I'm going to measure, it says the width. So I'm going to take my ruler here, okay, my other ruler. And again, I'm going to take it and I'm going to put the 0 right there to the edge of the 0 so you can see 0. And my width, so I have 5. I have at least 5, so I'm going to put 5 down for that. And the nearest half of an inch would be, I think it's close to 5. So I'm just going to put 5 for that one right there. Put the little colon right there, semicolon. And then to the nearest quarter of an inch, it looks like, okay, remember this is halves right here, and this is a quarter. So it looks like 5 1/4. It's pretty close to it. So those are my measurements for a book. Okay, the length of a pencil. Boy, they are just throwing me curveballs all day. Like I actually have pencils lying around here. I mean, come on, it's a classroom. You think I have actual pencils here? Come on, get real. Let me find a pencil. Hang on. Yeah, there's no pencil. So we're gonna use a pen instead. Okay. So we have a pen. We're gonna line it up on the 0 right there. 0. So it looks like to the nearest half inch, we have 5. It looks like we have about 5. It's pretty close to this half here. So we're going to say, oops, I got a 5.5. And then quarter of an inch, we're going to say it's pretty close to this third one, right? So this would be 5 3/4 of an inch. Okay. Calculators we don't really have lying around here. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and cross this one out because we just don't have those. All right, because we have them on our Chromebooks now. For tape dispenser, I'm going to use this stapler instead. Okay, so I'm going to line this 0 up right here. Okay, line it up to the 0, 0 right there. And as you can see way over here, it looks to me like we have 7 as our whole number. So we're going to do it to the nearest half inch. It's pretty close to 7.5 because this would be 7.5 right here, right? So we're going to say 7.5. The nearest quarter of an inch would be probably this first. Here's 7, here's a quarter, here's a half, 3/4, right? So it looks like it's pretty close to 7 1/4 of an inch. Okay. All right. Now we can't really use this ruler here for this bottom part down here because it asks for like 2 and 3 or 3. We can do the first one if we wanted to, 1 1/4. So it says draw a line segment. So we're going to basically make there, 1 1/4. So we're going to go to 1 and then the quarter. We do it right there. And then we just draw our line. There's our 1 1/4 of an inch. Pretty easy, right? 2.5. Again, we say that's start at the 0. We go all the way to the 2 right here, right? And 2.5. So there's the half marker right there. Take the ruler, connect it. There's our 2.5. And then for 3 3/4, again, we're going to start. I'm going to use this ruler because we have to do slightly a bigger one here. So I'm going to start at the 0, which is going to be right here. Okay, start at the 0 right there. There. It's kind of hard to see it on your end. And we're going to do 3 3/4. Okay, so we're going to go all the way to 3, and then we have 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. So right there's our 3/4 right there. And then we're going to connect our line, and that's our line segments according to what they wanted us to measure it to. All right. Number 13, the length of a remote controlled car is 8.5 inches to the nearest half inch and 8 1/4 inches to the nearest quarter inch. Which measurement is more precise? Now remember what we always said, the halves and the quarters. The quarters are the most accurate because you get get all the way over here 8 1/4. They say it's 8.5. Well, 8 1/4 is way more precise because look how much difference we had off right here, right? So it's going to be 8 1/4. Carrie and Sam each measure the length of their cat's tail. Weird. That's very weird. Why would you measure your cat? Oh, whatever. Carrie measured the length to the nearest half inch. Her measurement is 6.5 inches. Sam measured the length to the nearest quarter inch. His measurement was 6 3/4. Circle the correct description of the actual measurement of the cat's tail. Okay. So less than 6.5. Well, again, if we look at 6.5, we got here's 6.5 right here, right? 6.5. And then the other guy, he measured his 6 3/4. So could this be right? Less than 6.5? Well, he measured that, she measured that. So that can't be it, right? So that's wrong. Between 6.5 and 6 3/4. Well, here's 6.5, 6 3/4. Could that be in somewhere in between there? I think so, right? Greater than 6 3/4. Well, she's got 6.5, so then it would be this way. So that can't be it either, right? So there you go. James used a ruler to measure a piece of string. James said the string is 2.5 inches long. Find and correct his mistake. So, what did he do wrong here? Well, as you can see, he did not start at the 0. Right? He should have started here, and he didn't. He started way over here. So, He didn't start at 0, man. So let's measure this now. We start this one. We use our little tiny ruler that we had. So we started at 0. So it looks like to me the string is actually 2 inches long. It's actually, let's see, remember if you measure it right there, see at the 2-inch mark, it's actually 2 inches long. Come on, James. Goodness. When might you want to measure the length of an object to the nearest quarter inch as opposed to the nearest half? Well, obviously, since it's the nearest quarter of an inch, you'd want to measure anything that you want a very precise measurement, right? So I'm going to put any time you need a more precise measurement. If you need a very precise one, you're going to use fourths, or you're going to probably use eighths also. All right, so you can either just use this ruler right here that you guys already made to measure these guys right here. Make sure again you start on the 0. These MP3 players, I mean, this book is so old, and I already did a stapler for you, which I didn't realize that. So you're welcome for that. MP3 player. Let's everybody use your headphones. Okay, the circle on your guys' headphones on the yellow headphone. Measure that circle. Okay, the width of it from here to here. Measure that in place of the MP3 player. Okay. So I know that you watch this video if you are indeed measuring the yellow headphone as an MP3 player. Stapler's been done for you. On the back, you got to draw line segments. Remember, start on 0. All right. Words will be found. This vocabulary check will be found right here. And then again, these are fairly simple here. So whenever you guys are finished, make sure you have your name on it and it's stapled in the correct sequence that I have here. If you have any questions, ask me or whoever is in the room at the time to help you guys out. But by all means, make sure that you please ask me or somebody else for assistance. And make sure you guys, if you do use a ruler, to put the ruler back in the wherever the ruler is supposed to go. I have a box in there. So, all right, guys, good luck and happy doing some math.